And I now give the floor to Ms. Donika Gervalla.
Thank you. Honorary Mr. President of the Security Council, Honorary Special Representative Mr. Tanin, honorary members, dear colleagues. First, I promise I will be much shorter than my Serbian colleague. The period of the current UNMIK report ends just a week before our new government of the Republic of Kosovo get elected by a new parliament after a historic election. For the first time in any Balkan country so far, the majority of the people had voted to free itself from corruption and crime. The Republic of Kosovo is entering in a new era. We are on a journey to fulfill the will and the request of our people, namely, to make our young country a fully recognized and respected member of the family of nations, where rule of law, democracy, and a fair chance for everybody is the law of the land. As Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo, I therefore take the liberty to address you in all openness. We might refer to details of the report later, but it is important to understand the new quality of this new government and its approach. It is obvious that Kosovo, as all the countries, is still fighting the pandemic. Here, I want to thank our friends and partners who are helping us to get vaccines for Kosovo. But we are at the same time preparing the measures to implement that new era. We are dealing with a wide range of issues which will bring us to leave a corrupt era behind and transform in a real state of law. The pressing issues are ranging from justice reform to investment and jobs, foreign investment and rule of law instead of corruption in a young, vibrant, and European-minded country. We were fighting for these changes for many years, within parties, in NGOs, or as private citizens. Now the people have entrusted us with that historic change, and we are committed to deliver. Kosovo keeps being committed to the path of integration into the European Union and NATO, as you might easily identify from the flags behind me. For many a great joy, for some a concern, we are also striving to become a member of the United Nations at a certain point in the future. We are extending our hands to everybody of good faith, since all of us are bound together in a common fate on our tiny and fragile planet. With our cultural heritage of more than 3,000 years, we are, along with the Greeks, one of the two most ancient cultures in Europe. While our tiny but very special country is not afraid. On the contrary, we are eager to enter into substantial, serious talks with even those who are responsible for most of the conflicts and even genocide in Bosnia and Kosovo in recent decades. In this new government of the Republic of Kosovo, you find courageous, open-minded, and internationally experienced people who do not shy away to address even painful issues in order to find a solution. We are open, we are proud, and we are not afraid of anything or anybody. We are in favor of reconciliation while we have many people with horrifying encounters with Serbia. Our Prime Minister, for example, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo, has been trialed as a student in a political show trial by the authoritarian Serb regime, subsequently heavily mistreated in jail for more than 2 years. Our newly elected Vice President of the Parliament of Kosovo survived when she was only 13 years young, with the willful massacre of Serb forces against civilians in which her mother, her grandmother, 2 of her younger brothers, and other relatives of her family have been murdered. That innocent girl had been found with 16 shots and barely survived. One of the new members of our parliament with the most votes by the people has been raped by Serb soldiers when she was only 16. She took the courage to overcome the painful burden of talking about these crimes in public. She gives a voice to all the 20,000 victims of rape, and she is widely admired for carrying that burden. None of the Serb rapists of all those cases has been held accountable so far. The current UNMIK report at a quiet late number touches a topic which ranks among the top 5 priorities in our country. Everybody of us here has a mother. My American colleague, my Serbian counterpart, my Norwegian colleague, my Russian counterpart, literally everybody. I am a mother myself and a proud one too. There is nothing, literally nothing on earth, which is more painful, more horrific, and in a true sense, unbearable than losing a child. I would like to invite you to read and to listen to the group of mothers, which is called the Mothers of Jakoba. These brave women who have lost their own innocent children to a merciless and murderous campaign of the Serb regime are in sorrow and pain. But they are standing tall. They are not giving up. Since many, many years, again and again, they request and they ask nothing else than to tell them where their children are. They are aware that they have to expect the worst, but it shouldn't be an issue at all to tell these mothers where their children have been buried after they have been assassinated. So our question is, what is it that Serbia seems incapable of showing some empathy to mothers looking out for the remains of their own children? It is important to notice we are not talking about events of the 19th century here. We are not talking about the brutal and outrageous and unspeakable war crimes committed during the First World War or the Second War in the Balkans and Europe and in many other places of our globe. What we are talking about here is living memory. The victims who have survived are mostly still alive. Also, most of the perpetrators who committed these unspeakable crimes, who caused more than 15,000 deaths in just a few months in our tiny country, are still alive. They enjoy their life in Serbia and elsewhere, and are celebrated often even for those atrocities. To put in perspective the dimension, imagine the figures for your own countries. Those victims would amount to more than 1.2 million Russians killed in Russia in just 1 year. It would mean 2.6 million Americans killed in America in a year. It would mean that more than 11.6 million Chinese murdered in China in just 1 year. And the world is watching that only a few of these war criminals are being seriously prosecuted, in many cases in show trials, just cleared from any guilt. Serbia does all that, and it is not even admitting that the biggest crimes against humanity on European soil after Nazi Germany have been committed in the name of Greater Serbia just in recent decades. Serb leaders do still even praise war criminals, and they do still refuse to fully cooperate with international UN institutions. Even alleged war criminals are still sitting in their parliament. All these blatant violations of most basic norms of the United Nations and moreover of humanity is not anything where you can say, just get over it. It's about basic values of humanity, and it is about our country which will never, ever get under control and command of those who committed this atrocity and do not even acknowledge it. Serbia has to acknowledge and to accept that it has to pay a price for its murderous atrocities. Serbia should confront its past, free itself from its genocidal roots, and should try to become a truly civilized European country. Serbia had locked itself in the past, in a dark past. It was in medieval thinking sticking in the dark and sticking in the past within too many of Serb elites, what has driven Serbia to racism, finally fascism and genocide in the 1990s. Let me ask in all openness, what is it? What makes victims of genocide, and here I'm talking about that 80 years ago, these days the Nazi Germany has started to bomb Belgrade and committed genocide against Serbs, Jews and other, including Albanian people who stood up against fascism. So what is it? What makes victims of genocide and fascism commit genocide themselves to end up in fascism and not even face its responsibility in the aftermath? We are convinced, once Serbia recognizes the facts, if it addresses its dangerous history of aggression and destabilizing the region, if it stops aggressively interfering in its neighboring countries, from Bosnia to Montenegro to Kosovo, it has the potential to normalize its behavior and to become a normal country which its neighbors do not have to consider a ticking bomb. Once Serbia has achieved that, it will turn from being the biggest threat for peace and stability in the region to a maybe complicated but no longer risky partner. We, as a neighboring country, have all interest in normalizing our relationship with Serbia. We have an interest in a European-minded, not backward-minded Serbia. We have an interest in an open dialogue about our common past and hopefully our common future. But ladies and gentlemen, we are a tiny but very special country. We are small, but we are standing tall. We have a lot of reliable friends, and we are reliable on our part. My own father, a dissident, an intellectual, a writer, musician, and a journalist, has been assassinated by the Belgrade regime even on foreign soil in Germany, where he had fled from the brutality of that Belgrade regime. I tell my children that it is not about the Serbs in general, but one has to make the distinction. Serbia has to make the distinction too. It has to identify the war criminals, bring them to justice, cooperate with the UN and us in finding the mass graves of the still missing, fight fascism in your country, stop playing games, and get to the table and talk seriously. Then we might find a historic solution, not only for our bilateral problems, but as a reconciliation in the Balkans in general. The world knows, most of the adversaries even know, the independence of the Republic from Kosovo is a done deal. The earlier Serbia accepts this reality, the better it can get from its dark past into a bright future. We, on our part, stay open, despite all harm Serbia did to our people, to extend our hands, to talk and to recognize each other. Let's begin a new era. Thank you very much.